Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we're going to end out our Wong Kar-Wai Festival with his 2013 film, The Grandmaster.
Let's dive in. All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media. Mm-hmm. We do 101s, we do festivals.
That's right.
We do that one scene. And we are ending out this Wong Kar-Wai Festival.
It's been a fascinating festival. How do you feel about, we'll get into this movie, but just having this end, a lot of times we go through this. I think we went through this with Pedro Almodovar and a few other directors that we, wanted to be more educated about some of their stuff. Over the years, there's tons of them. Powell and Pressburger, we can go on forever. But we always learn something, whether it's good or bad. I feel like I'm always glad when we end these because I feel like I know more about film history and this person in particular and how they contributed to that.
Yeah, Pedro Almodovar is a really good example of kind of going back and seeing something earlier from their career and then seeing newer movies spanning different kinds of genres.
Braver movies.
Well, yeah, and seeing how through different lenses of different genres, their filmmaking styles really are like almost heightened in a way because it is a different genre. And I think that's completely true here with The Grandmaster, where
totally different.
I would not have ever thought of the stylization of In the Mood for Love through the lens of Kung Fu.
Yeah.
But holy shit, man, that's some chocolate and peanut butter for me. Again, thinking about these hidden camera kind of stylization of we're two rooms away through windows watching characters talk, but it's in this really charged atmosphere of our character Ip Man, Tony Leung again.
In the mood for badass.
Dude, it's so it's still so gorgeous looking.
It is his films have all been beautiful, all of them, regardless of what you think of him or if you like his stories or not. They're all gorgeous. And this one is next level.
Dude, seriously,
it's the most polished, at least.
It's the most polished, but still has all of those hallmarks that you come to love from his style. Mm-hmm. And I would say, even though there are some sequences that get very wide and open, his love of almost these claustrophobic areas to shoot in, to then hinge that around fight scenes, make it so cool. It's unlike something I've ever seen before, where it's literally, you talk about the crowded in hallways from In the Mood for Love, and you're like, okay, now two people are going to kick each other's asses in that crowded hallway. That's what we're seeing here. And
it's true.
Those beautiful sort of green tinted glass windows, someone's going to get fucking kicked through one, right? And I loved it. It worked. I would never have thought of putting those two things together, but it works so well here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about what does this remind me of? It's him still, and even the stuff at the beginning of Chungking where it's very blurry and stuff. He puts that in his action movies here.
Totally.
And it's elevated. It makes it so much more intense and it makes it more unique, right?
We also have the raindrops coming off of everything, like we saw in The Mood for Love, but it's off of his hat brim and
beautiful slow-mo that he uses a lot here. But I said this is like a serious kung fu hustle meets The Matrix.
Yeah.
Directed by Akira Kurosawa.
Oh, I love it. Well, what I wrote down was it's like a combination of To Live The Last Emperor, and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Sure.
It has a bit of all those elements
Yeah, I mean,
into it.
I think we've seen a lot of Chinese movies like this too that were made before this, like Hero or Memories of Geisha or Crouching Tiger, stuff like that did become famous in the early 2000s, in America at least.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's in the style of some of those, but it has his own edge to it.
Completely.
It was very unique. I really liked a lot of where the story went. I love just kind of like scenes like where he's going and having to go up against 8 different types of fighting, and like the fact that he's the future of kung fu and the future of the South, and there is a very big war going on. You know, I think he says at some point, "I won't even eat Japanese rice."
Totally. I'd rather starve and eat Japanese rice.
Japanese rice. But like going through not only what Ip Man is and that he's a real person.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with the trilogy outside of this that was made before this. This is different. This is, I would imagine, more like an origin story than those other movies, though I haven't seen those, so I can't say. But
right. Well, and and maybe it's just because I finally am getting around to watching Better Call Saul, but there's something about the pragmatism of Ip Man, of Tony Leung's character here, that reminds me of Hitman Mike, where he's just like, I'm not flashy.
Yeah.
I'm not doing the tiger style. I'm not dancing around the street. He's like,
but I'll beat all of it.
Yeah, he's like, Kung Fu isn't about being an entertainer. Like, I don't do any of that shit. He's like, I know what I need to do, and I am the best, right? And he is so humble in that way and soft-spoken in that way that then seeing him be the level of badass he is endlessly entertaining.
Yep.
Even when it means there's this challenge early on that's between him and one of the other local masters, and you think shit is going to go down. And instead, it's a philosophical battle over this rice cake. And that is like, to have that early in the movie is so cool, because you've already seen this open street reigning a challenge at the very beginning of the movie, so you know that Ip Man is a total badass.
Yeah.
But then this next challenge is about philosophy and about the state of China and about, you know, whether or not we can keep our cultures and like how we do it and how we work together. And he still wins that. Just a challenge of the mind around this rice cake. And like,
He starts
cool, man.
Famous and impressing his elders and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, I think it's kind of like a initiation ceremony to some degree, right? Like
Right.
You have to prove yourself before we're gonna call you the future of kung fu. But kung fu divides nations in this movie. They have this this brothel, the Gold Pavilion, which is full of refugees and masters and all this stuff. But so it has all of this fun, cool fighting stuff, right? And you know, everything gets held at the pavilion, all this stuff. But it also has those slow, beautiful moments.
Yeah. And
you get some history of him or another character that he falls for or whatever. And I love that he goes out and one of the first thing he says about his past life is that I've had 40 years of privilege. Like I've been lucky my whole life.
Yeah. And there's also this tragic backstory to him also, though, right? Where it's like, and I'd say this is a very Wong Kar-Wai element to this, is that the movie is not linear in the way that it's told. It jumps back and forth.
Yeah.
Again,
It gets to be a lot, honestly.
breaking that narrative apart, though, to just kind of tell this larger story, I think is really interesting, because when we start way before some of these events, when he was talking about this idea of his privilege and of the things that he had. We go back through his backstory, which is like some straight up Batman shit of just like,
Totally.
you know, you tried to just be a good guy and you tried to have a regular life, and like it all got taken away from you. And
Yep.
what is it that he says, you know, before the Japanese invaded, and he was like, you know, we went straight from spring. If life is about seasons, we went straight from spring into winter, right? Like his 2 of his daughters die. He loses touch with his
They had
wife.
8 years of war and riots and all of this stuff. And yeah, one of my favorite lines is break from what you know and you will know more. But that's his philosophy. Like that's one of his philosophies of, you know, becoming a better person, a better fighter, all the things.
I did you like this movie?
Yeah.
I
Like you
absolutely
said,
love this
endlessly
movie.
entertaining. He's cool as fuck. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
The story's intriguing. Like all of the characters are intriguing.
And we again have
Yeah, I
what's
was
her
gonna say
name?
Ziyi Zhang.
Oh yeah,
And
again
she's amazing here.
from obviously 2046 and before that these other movies that we had mentioned, and she actually she's in a little bit of the movie earlier on.
Yeah.
There's this great staircase fight scene where the camera just feels like it's suspended in midair, you know, and she flies over and he grabs a hold of her to kind of save her, but then the step breaks underneath him, and so technically she wins. And then they talk about having this rematch.
Yep.
And we get this quote unquote flashback, which is really the middle section of the movie.
Yeah.
That's about her story. And I have to say, this is one of the most fascinating parts of the movie to me, because again, up to this point, there are all these elements that feel very much like Wong Kar-Wai's direction. Like I said, these like crowded, cramped in spaces where all
It
this
seems
action
very
happening.
different than everything else.
That's what I was going to say. Is well, that does, but once we go to this flashback, it feels like the end of In the Mood for Love, where all of a sudden we're at Angkor Wat at that temple.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're not in a crowded hallway at all. And we have all this room to breathe. These winter scenes in this flashback are massive and gorgeous. I said that it was like, it looked like if Ingmar Bergman decided to direct a kung fu film. Like it's like these, just like each shot could be a painting.
Oh
to
yeah,
hang
there's
on the
one
wall,
where he's
you know?
standing in front of a building, and it looks like a comic book, and it has something going on to that impressionistic thing that you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
where he's really good at using that. But like, or the shot from Chungking Express where the two of them are on both sides of the counter, right? And,
Yeah.
and everything is moving in front of them.
Yeah.
But they're staying the same the whole time.
This whole the whole flashback sequence is probably my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, that's really
that really is about her, about
hands gets brought up a lot.
about her father, about this promise that she makes to not ever teach kung fu and to just go off and raise a family and all this. And then she has this showdown in this train station that is like, it's so incredible. It's such an incredible sequence in the movie.
Just what these people can do with their bodies is insane to me. They have so much control
Yeah.
over every like limb, every tiny like fingernail.
Yeah.
Like just crazy.
Well, and we've seen that with her throughout other movies, but I've never seen that with Tony Leung.
It's true.
And to see like this guy that we've known from all these other movies as like the sort of almost Mad Men style, like suave guy with the cigarette and the skinny tie, who's an author, suddenly be like this kung fu badass is really exhilarating just as a fan.
The lighting the cigarette scene.
Oh my God. Where they're both like, it's a total like showdown.
It's awesome.
And it's just lighting this single cigarette.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. But I want to get back to this train station fight, because it starts off with, and there's a handful of scenes in this movie that are not just kung fu, but also involve blades. And there's something about the sound design that makes it
had some John Wick in it.
Yeah, it makes you cringe. You're like, the guy who's known as the Razor, right? And he's like, I want to hear it sing.
Yeah.
And you hear it sing,
That's right.
and it just makes you cringe. And there are knives in this train station fight, but it's the middle of winter, so they're all wearing these bulky coats. And every time the knives cut through somebody, the stuffing flies out. And you're seeing it float down. Like he makes sure to cut away to see like, oh, it's another hit, and it's this stuffing. And again, it makes the knives feel really sharp, even though it's this combination of stuffing and sound design.
It looks so cool.
Oh my God, it's just absolutely brilliant. And then the final showdown between her and this other master is incredible, and the train is racing by. And again, I knew like, okay, the train is CGI, like, but it doesn't look, it all feels totally practical and looks again as classic as any of his other shots. Like it's shot beautifully,
But differently.
differently.
It's just different. He's more in people's faces. He uses the slow-mo way more. There's a lot. I mean, again, everything is always tight, but we do get these big, grandiose, beautiful fight scenes and streets and stuff like that. And I almost would say it's his most beautiful one we've seen so far.
Which is a hell of a thing to say.
Because like In the Mood for Love is so crazy beautiful, and all of his movies have this beauty to it. So they play down certain styles and mediums, and they don't seem to like things don't seem to be thrown together, if that makes sense. Like I'm just thinking compared to something like Chungking where he's writing the day of and trying to put this together. This seems just way more put together than that kind of stuff.
Professional in that sense. Like
you have a biography to some degree here too, so there's maybe some maybe more guiding light, and maybe this could be like, I don't know, is a kung fu movie as a Chinese director like a badge of honor? Is that like something every Chinese director probably wants to do at some point in their career? I'm not sure.
I don't know either, but I wonder if it's kind of like, I wonder if it's like the American version of a horror movie. Like once you're an established director
or something.
Yeah, or a Western. Like once you're an established director, to do a genre picture is like, well, what am I going to do with it, right? So if you think about when Tarantino has decided to dabble in genre pictures, they are genre, but they're also so obviously him.
Yeah.
I felt like that's what was happening here. Like it is an amazing kung fu movie just on its own merits, but it also
great character depth.
It also feels so much a Wong Kar-Wai film. Like especially like I said, the flashback sequences feel almost like a different director, whereas everything that's taking place, that whole sequence where he asks the other master what he had for dinner, and he tells him, and he's like, well, it's going to be a shame because it's going to go to waste. And then all he does is hit him one time and the dude barfs. That whole sequence is literally feels like the camera is like 3 rooms over looking through multiple panes of glass.
Yeah.
Like it's so classically Wong Kar-Wai in that way and looks unlike any kung fu movie I've seen. Right?
It's true. It does look very different. I would say it is more in the vein of stuff like Hero and those that were really based around the war or the Memoirs of Geisha. Like all of those stylized movies that I would say it's in that vein, but so much more authentic, I feel. Not to say that those directors didn't know what they were doing or anything like that. It just, with his style that he has, like you said, melding those two together, it makes it like something you haven't seen before.
Completely. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I think that it's...
I love that she spits up blood after claiming victory.
Completely right onto the glass pane that the camera's on the other side of, which again looks like so classically his style, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it looks awesome.
Yeah,
too.
It's amazing.
And we do get a little of the crouching tiger, forbidden love thing, right? Like you could never actually have it,
right?
It's one of those things that you just go a lifetime. I've been in love with you for like 50 years.
Well, and I mean, and if you go with this
but
arc,
we're not actually together.
This arc of Tony Leung's character. This is the nadir of his whole journey through all of Wong Kar-Wai's films, which is, I'm not even looking for that anymore, right? I've resigned myself to just be on this mission that doesn't have anything to do with my heart, right? It has to do with my honor. It has to do with all these other things because that part of my life is gone now. And I think it's like, again, if we had watched this earlier in the festival, I might not have been thinking about it as much. But at this point now, I'm like, no, I've seen his character be a young cop. I've seen his character be a early middle-age author, a later middle-aged author looking for love, and now finally a kung fu master. And I would actually say, jumping around a little bit, but at this point, after watching all 4 of these movies, I feel like I finally watched the good version of Cloud Atlas. like because of this ensemble cast,
Yeah.
like that has appeared in all of his movies.
It's a good version.
This is like we've got everything, right? We have like the sci-fi future, we have the kung fu past, we have like the 1950s middle, we have like the 1990s.
Oh my God.
Right? It's like we've seen all of these characters like looking for satisfaction and love and finding their way through the world. And I was like, I feel like if you stitched together these four movies that we've done, it's like what Cloud Atlas should have been, right?
That's fucking brilliant. Yes.
I couldn't stop thinking about that while watching the Grandmasters. I was like, it's the same Tony Leung. It's him through all the eras. Like,
that's good. That's very good. Great movie, just really unique. Really loved all the characters too. Like everyone was just awesome in it.
Yeah.
Not a bad, and it just has that fun style. And they do lean on the fighting, but they make it worth it. Like all of those other movies, that's like a really entertaining, fun way to do it. I love this line where he says, "How boring it would be a life without regrets."
Yeah. Oh, and that again, like to talk about this echoing theme throughout all the movies.
Yeah.
That is kind of why I feel like this is the kind of the same character coming to grips with everything, which is like the Tony Leung and all the other movies would never have said that.
Sure.
It's only after living 100 lives that you have this character who's centered enough to be like, yeah, I wish my wife was still here. I wish my kids were still here. But like, this is what life is. Life is about all this stuff. You're still on the Cloud Atlas thing.
Yeah, that's so good.
I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was just like, because we've watched the director sort of age through these themes and ideas. And so I think like the maturity of a character like Ip Man is very much that to that point of the quote that you just gave of like, yeah, regrets, they're a hell of a thing, but like that means that you did a bunch of stuff with your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, that feels very potent.
Yeah. Last thing we should end on is that, he actually went on to train Bruce Lee. Is that correct?
In what's referred to as Wing Chun Kung Fu. That's again this very stripped down, very real, down to earth version of Kung Fu that isn't all these sort of frills. It's very much more about like, where he even says at one point, he's like, it's not about energy work. It's not about any of this other spiritual stuff. It's very real. It's very feet on the ground.
Yep.
And that, yeah, I mean, that became the most well-known sort of Kung Fu style once Bruce Lee brought that to America, right? And that became like the most popular
version of
Kung Fu,
yeah.
And it's like, I wonder how much of the Ip Man story, I mean, I've did a little bit of cursory reading, but how much of that is obviously just buried in the legend of being the guy who trained Bruce Lee, the most famous kung fu.
It's quite a story if it is true.
I mean, even if 50% of it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't even. There's something about that era of kung fu movies that is this like, and Wong Kar-Wai catches it so perfectly. It still is that sort of. I mean, this is definitely earlier than In the Mood for Love, but that same sort of like turn of the century sexiness of like the well-dressed men. I mean, I'm thinking of even something like Kurosawa's Stray Dogs, right? Where you're like, there's like a sexiness to that sort of detective skinny tie looking guy that's just like standing in the corner smoking the cigarette. But that sort of like that sexiness of again, that sort of like madman suit kind of era mixed into the karate or mixed into the kung fu stuff is totally like my favorite kind of pastiche from that era. We already know that he knows how to do that stylization from his earlier films.
Yeah.
So seeing elements of that, again, I'm thinking of that Razor character is like the most classic version, which is probably where the Kung Fu Hustle thing kind of comes into play, right?
Yeah.
That and like the fedora that he
Yeah,
wears.
the fedoras, I think,
That's so
and the
cool,
opening
man.
scene is similar to Kung Fu. Again, not as it's more serious, not as silly as Kung Fu Hustle is,
but super stylized.
yeah, that overly stylized part. But amazing movie, amazing director. So glad we continued to talk about a movie that we both love and then learn more past that. So
completely
really excited. But we're gonna do an extension of this festival. Wong Kar-Wai, we always like to do a fifth thing to kind of associate it with. Do you want to kind of talk about?
Yeah, I just thought, again, back to my stupid Cloud Atlas comment. I just was like, there was this feeling of like Wong Kar-Wai uses this troupe of actors, and so I thought a really great idea for a 101 would be sort of like other directors are favorite tropes that directors use throughout their different films. Even if, and this is not sequels, this is not same character in different things. This is very much like
same actors, same directors.
Same actors, same directors. So the rule will be 3 actors, 1 director, and we're both going to show up with a couple of our favorites.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Please like and subscribe. Next week, we are going to go through that one scene from Amelie. So please join us and like, comment, go to Instagram, TikTok, all the places to help us out to get up on the socials.
I do a lot of dancing in our TikToks, right?
Oh, so much dancing. It's there's a lot of nudity too.
God.
So there you go.
Now no one's checking it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It's just bad marketing.
None of this is good. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.